Hi, welcome to the Second Wind Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Gonsalves. Staciana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm glad you are excited. I'm going to mirror that excitement as well. Looking forward to our conversation. I think you've got, I don't know, I'm going to say a great story. A great story is both an athlete and one that is certainly intriguing as we talk about that shift from a high performance athlete into, shifting that balance into whatever follows sport. And I'm quite keen to step into that with you.
Thanks. I know, me too. I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, look, Staciana, for those listening who may know a bit about you, but not everything, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you're up to today.
Sure. So let's see. I am Californian, live in California. I was a professional swimmer for a really long time, Olympic gold medalist in the Sydney 2000 Olympics. I now teach full time. I teach physiology, health, PE. I love to move, addicted to yoga. I am a mom. And what else? What other qualifiers should I basically obsessed with movement. I'm passionate about movement. I'm passionate about positive psychology, best practices, and really interested in breathwork.
Do you know, I love the addicted to yoga. That one is, I think that's the first one I've heard like that. So, that, what does that mean? So how often or how frequently do you like to practice yoga?
I do hot yoga specifically, and kind of the Bikram style, but at a place that only does it for an hour, so it's not as regimented as Bikram. But I found as an athlete, my big muscles take over, and I was so inflexible. I started doing yoga in college and hated it because I couldn't touch my toes. But it's one of those things that I realized Savasana, where you lay down flat and just work on your breathing and being present. It's a form of meditation. I was hooked after like 2 weeks of that because I was not good at being still. I'm still not good at being still. And it was kind of a sense of relief to still my body and my mind. And then it just became an addiction. And it's one of those things that I feel like it keeps me young, keeps my body fluid and moving and works all the good systems in my body, like the lymphatic system, keeps me healthy, etc. So I use it for just overall health in general to feel good and not turn into monster mom.
Okay. Well, knowing myself as a dad, monster dad's probably not too far away all the time, just on the edge. Maybe I
Yeah,
should be more
usually when
yoga.
it's trying to get to school, that's usually when she comes out.
Yes. Oh, I like that. Now, you did mention teaching, so that's something that you're clearly doing a lot today. Was that something that you always had in mind as an athlete?
My parents were teachers. I think it was kind of innate in me to teach. I just love learning, and I think you have to love learning to be a teacher. But then I found myself coaching quickly after I finished my swimming career, and it was very similar to teaching. And so it kind of led me in that direction to just working with people and sharing kind of the skill set that I already had learned from, athletics.
Yes. Yeah. And what's it's interesting. I do speak with loads of athletes, and for many of us, we find this natural desire to go into coaching after we've finished playing or as we're finishing playing. Doesn't always work out for the best. We're not always the best types of coaches. How did you find that little shift? Did you find being a coach natural, or was it something you've had to work on?
It's interesting. They talk about how like athletes are natural athletes and it's hard to explain to other people how they do what they do. And I think that's one reason really successful athletes sometimes fail at the coaching level. I think part of being a coach is having mentorship of coaches that know how to teach. So I was really fortunate to have a mentor, Andy Kawamoto-Klatt. She was the age group coach for Irvine Novas when I started. And she taught me how to coach swimming at that developmental level, break down the stroke, the technique, et cetera. And then also how to motivate the kids. And I think I'm definitely a natural cheerleader. And so for me, it was kind of this like just finding joy in teaching skill, but also teaching growth and development on the social emotional side for kids. teaching them how to be good humans. And I think that is what brings me the most joy, more so than, watching them swim fast.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's really good. Quite inspiring as well. Makes me think, tonight I'll be coaching, and it just made me think, okay, it's about them becoming good humans, not about winning. Good if we win,
Yes.
but still. Um, well, for you, I mean, thinking then about you and sport as you were growing up in, I guess I don't know actually. I was going to say athletics, but I suppose I was going to jump in and say, well, was it swimming predominantly? So I'll ask the broader question. For you as you grew up, what sort of sport were you exposed to, and how did you find yourself enjoying it?
Well, I'm definitely not a land mammal. I was very uncoordinated on land. I don't know if it was swimming or just in general, not having the coordination. So I was actually an asthmatic, and the doctor said the best thing to do would be to swim. And so my parents put my sister and I in the water at a very young age. We just loved being in the water. It was kind of the joy of swimming for me. It's what kept me in it, was just the love for the water. And I really couldn't do anything else, to be quite honest. I actually didn't develop true athleticism on land until I started doing yoga and having an awareness of my body. Um, I had strength. I could do, strength in my legs from my sports, from swimming, but, I could do the most pull-ups in middle school. Like, it was so silly. But in terms of coordination, it took me a long time. So I really find it fascinating, children that do more than one sport and they can learn how to move and body awareness and different, activities. I think that's really important to develop more so than just one sport.
Yeah. God, that's quite interesting. All that strength and speed in water, and you consider yourself uncoordinated out of water. Did you very quickly then specialize into swimming? Swimming was the way that you did all of your sport as you grew up.
Yes, for sure. We pretty much from 6 years on, I swam 4 or 5 days a week and just loved it so much. I would get home and eat all my food and pass out. My parents were like, this is the best babysitter ever. So they encouraged us to keep swimming.
Yeah.
But I found a joy in it. I had teammates that I enjoyed being around, and I just really loved being underwater.
Yeah. Well, when did you start to realize, hey, I'm good at this, and what did that change?
Um, I really was not great for a long time, and uh, had to figure it out. I wasn't natural. I don't think I was a natural swimmer. But I was really good at observing and watching other people and learning and copying. And I had this innate ability to race. I wanted to race everyone all the time, whether they knew it or not. And I think that actually helped me improve quite a bit because my work ethic and my competitiveness leaned towards working, towards being faster. I think age 13, something like that. So 6 or 7 years after I started swimming, I started to see some significant time improvement and grew taller and stronger and things like that. And so I think that helped me improve. And then once I qualified for nationals time wise when I was 15, and I had just watched the 1996 Olympics with Amanda Beard, and we were the same age. We swam the same stroke, and I thought like, oh, I want to be like her. And she was training in Irvine, which was about 60 miles from my hometown. And so we went up there and met the coach, Dave Salo, and he was phenomenal. And I was like, I want to be here. I want to train with Amanda and all these other people. And getting in that circle of athletes and realizing like, oh, they're normal. They're just like me, but they're really fast. And it made me so much better. And I improved quite quickly after that.
Wow. And what do you think it was about the environment that made you progress so quickly?
Positive peer pressure, for one. Just the whole group doing it together was so empowering. It was fun. It was joyful. Our coach, Dave Salo, he had this ability to keep us engaged mentally, where we weren't just swimming laps back and forth and watching the black line, which I absolutely hated. I hate swimming for that. It was more of really complicated sets. He would say it, out loud verbally. We'd have to hear it, listen to it, process it, and then do it. And lots of components, so you'd have to remember it all. And I loved the engagement in my brain. It just felt like a challenge and fun, and was working on my memory all the time. And then it allowed me to really enjoy racing. Like, his whole thing was, we're going to do quality and we're going to race everything. Because why would you swim slowly in training? You have to race fast in the pool. And at the time in the early 2000s, that was pretty unique. It's still there was carryover 60s, 70s, 80s of just swimming yardage, lots and lots of yardage as swimmers. And if you look at track and athletics, like they specialize, depending on the sport, it's very specific how you train. So that was really nice to have a coach that not only knew how to keep us engaged as teenagers when we're, squirrel, but then
Yeah.
also allowing us to develop and have faith and belief that we could.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds like you say it was new then. It was a different way of thinking about training. It sounds like what he was doing, or what you and the team were going through, was you were training at that competitive pace. You were training at race pace. It wasn't we're training. It's well, we're getting ready to compete. It's quite
Yeah,
a different way it turns in your mind.
for sure.
Yeah, okay. I like that. And it does talk to a little bit, and I think we'll come on to about being in a high performance environment in order to learn, and
Mhm.
putting things into practice, putting doing things to prepare you for those sort of major events and major moments in life as well. So as you did that, you made this conscious decision about training and moving. What did that what impact did that have on you from an academic aspect?
I wrote all my essays in the water while I was swimming. I studied math in my brain. I mean, it was a lot, but I think part of the academics for me was you have such a limited time as an athlete to get things done because you're so scheduled. And I became hyper productive in that amount of time that I had. So I got less done if I had a break and I wasn't doing much. And that allowed me to really push myself mentally, just the engagement mentally of swimming and the technique and what that looked like, and then putting that into practice in school. I think that they really correlated.
And so for you, thinking about those two together as you were hitting those sort of mid-teens or early teens, in your mind, where did you want to get to? What did you visualize as your dream or your success?
Yeah, really simple. I watched Janet Evans swim in 1998 Olympics. I was 7 years old, and I saw her on the podium with her huge smile and just thought, wow, I want that. I wanted to be the best in the world. And when I was 15 and I made nationals and I went to talk to Dave, I said to him, I want to be the best in the world. And my coaches prior and adults prior that I said that to would kind of, laugh it off and snarky and they didn't believe, right? Because they, for whatever reason, who knows? Um, but he looked at me and said, well, we break world records in practice and we have fins on, but we still do it. And it was such an amazing response for me. I had never encountered that before. Someone that had so much belief, not only in himself, truly, right, but in us. And that carried over. So I wanted to be there. I was like, yeah, I want to break world records in practice. Let's do this.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but 15 is young to be breaking into to be swimming at nationals level. What
Uh,
was that? What was that like?
I think the first time I did it was really scary. I was not prepared. Um, I got great advice just to go in and play and dance and be silly and be a kid. And that really helped, I think. And then as I continued to swim at that level, just the validation. I think I need words of affirmation. That's one of my love languages. And just the validation, like, you got this. You deserve to be here. You've worked hard. We did a lot of visualization and my coach was great about, I'm in practice in a kick set and I'm trying to beat the person next to me and he's saying, that's the Chinese. You need to be the Chinese because I was going to Goodwill games and we were going to swim against the Chinese. It's going to be a dual meet. And so I could actually visualize and think as I was training, I need to beat this person. And it created that forward memory where all of a
Mhm.
sudden I get there and I've done it. I've done it 100 times in practice and I'm not as nervous. And that was
Yeah,
so powerful just a mental performance technique that he used for us that I took
yeah.
on.
So from you, from that athletic development, I always find it so fascinating. You going from, I'll say, your local or your rep team pool to then, continuing to move up, finding yourself in this new, I'll say, competitive environment. Suddenly, the Olympic dream, that smile that you wanted to have, got a lot closer.
Right.
How did things change for you, sort of athletically, sort of on in the pool and out of the pool? How did it change to you in the run up to the Olympics?
That's a great question. I trained for 3 years for it. Realistically, I moved over when I was 15, just turning 16, and I qualified for the Olympics at 19. And the lead up to that, I qualified for international competitions for Team USA. And so I was getting these kind of baby incremental growth steps to get there. Um,
Mhm.
and so it allowed me to build confidence and believe like, yeah, I can do this. And it was challenging, don't get me wrong. I mean, I was exhausted, but I loved the exhaustion. I really embraced my coach's phrase of, be comfortable being uncomfortable. I was like, yes, want this, you know, probably to a point of, maybe not so healthy, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being pushed and challenged and seeing where I could go. And then having that group of people, there's so much power in togetherness. There's so much power in the group that I think swimming, you think of it as an individual sport, but realistically, I couldn't have done it without that group of people, and we had Aaron Pearsall, we had Amanda Beard, we had Jason Lezak. I mean, there were so many people in the pool training with us at that point in time. Dave's goal was to qualify 4 people for the Olympics in 2000, and he did that. And it was phenomenal, right? And there was
Yeah.
just this belief. We all bought in.
Yes. Yeah. And so with that focus on your athletic performance, how much time did you have to think about running your life outside of that? How did you earn money? Where did you get to live? How did you think about, hey, the other side of Staciana?
Well, what's interesting is up to the Olympics in 2000, I was just a kid, right? My freshman year of college, everything was regimented. I was on full scholarship. So I didn't really have to think too much about my own responsibilities. It was all kind of for me, already set up in motion. Um, Fast forward to 2004, I was training for trials again, and I graduated college. I was back with Nova, back with my club coach, Dave, and training again. And I was in the best shape of my life for sure. I was literally just professionally swimming. My husband, Brett, at the time was able to work for me and kind of support me in that. And I, did lessons and clinics and things like that to make ends meet. But realistically, we were scraping by so that I could do this dream, and I was in the best shape of my life because I was just training. I was sleeping, eating, training, right? And I got to 2004 trials and I went my best time. I hadn't gone in 4 years and it was
Mm,
phenomenal. I was so excited. I was the fastest American, in
yeah.
prelims and I didn't make it in finals.
Hmm.
And I got fourth out of 5 girls and it was so hard to swallow that pill. It's like,
Yeah.
what? And no one had beat my time from prelims, but I still wasn't going.
Yeah. How how did you swallow that pill?
You know, the first reaction was to internally, I wanted to throw my goggles and stomp off.
Hmm.
Um, Luckily, it's fascinating, but my coach had told me before 2000, he gave me advice. He said, when you touch the wall, I want you to close your eyes and ask yourself to do everything you could to swim your best race. And if you did, acknowledge that and be happy, whatever the number is, so because you have to get first or second to go for trials for swimming. So in 2000, I said, yes, I did. And it was a 2 and I was going. And in 2004, I did the same thing and it was a no. And what had happened is this idea of mentorship, but I had been training with Jessica Hardy and she was 16 at the time and we were on the same team and she hadn't qualified for a national team yet. And Dave Deniston, who's also a good friend, we were all training together. And Dave and I were encouraging Jessica every day, and she was 16. She was young. She was scared. She didn't want to necessarily feel pain in practice, right? And so we were encouraging her all the time to go. And before finals at trials, Dave said to both of us, he pulled us together and said, I want Jessica to win at the 50 and I want Staciana to win at the 100 in the 100. So at the split, he wanted her to be first and me to be first at the 100. And he wanted us both to make the team. And I had so much faith in his belief that I could do that I didn't swim my own race. And I had so much, I wanted so much to support Jessica in her endeavor to be better that I was okay with that plan. And I shouldn't have been. Really. Realistically, I should have swam my own race because I was always out first. first. I had the world record no, I'm sorry, I had the American record in the 50 breaststroke, for a while. And that was really hard to realize, like, I didn't go out as fast as I should have. And I
Mm,
couldn't come back. It just wasn't my race strategy. And
mhm.
what was interesting, to answer your question, sorry, this is very long winded, but basically I
That's
wanted to throw my goggles. And
yeah.
this little voice in my head said, there are 30 plus people or more in the stands watching you. All my family and friends were local and they were watching me swim that race. And I knew how much they had sacrificed for me to be there and try and make that team. And I knew that if I had walked and threw my goggles and stomped off, it wouldn't be honoring those sacrifices that they had made for me. And so what I decided to do was just grit my teeth and put a smile on my face. And as I was, very negative self-talk to myself, you're a loser. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing this. I'm waving at the crowd, acknowledging them. And there were all these little kids that wanted my autograph because for 4 years I had signed no matter what. If a kid asked me for an autograph, I would stop, take the time, connect. It's important to me. And it, I learned more from not making the team in 2004 about my character and the importance of character and just being a good person than I did in 2000. And I'm grateful for that lesson.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing
Thanks.
it. And
Yeah.
just as I hear it, and you can see you as you've reflected on that, and I think it's wonderful that in the moment you were able to pause, think about the effort you'd put in, and think about the gratefulness that you had to those who had supported you. I think that in itself is quite wonderful. You talk about that strength of character, and that really shines through there. Thanks,
Thank
yeah,
you.
thanks for sharing that's
Yeah.
quite amazing.
Thanks.
So and so it then sort of leads us naturally on to sort of what follows that sort of the high and that sort of low that you have. Did you question, or to what extent did you question your, I guess, ongoing ability to perform at that level and start to think, well, what's going to happen now?
Yeah. I had two periods of transition, quite honestly. We're talking about that. And the first one was in 2000 after I made the Olympics because I did not perform as well as I should have at the games. I had mentally prepared to make the team, but I didn't ever create the forward memory of winning the Olympics. I wasn't prepared just to be there. And I was so scared and so overwhelmed. And it just took me to this place mentally where I didn't feel like I belonged there and I didn't feel connected to Team USA. And it was a shame because I didn't tap into that opportunity, you know. So then after that, I really struggled for basically 2.5 years. I struggled with depression and injury. And I ended up studying my undergraduate thesis on post-Olympic stress syndrome, which I had coined the term, but basically this idea that, coming off the Olympics, many athletes experience injury depression. And at the time in the 2000s, it really wasn't talked about. There was no education or awareness on it. And we kind of were left out, to figure it out on our own. And so as I began to study it at school at Berkeley, it was like, wow, this needs to be something that is exposed and then taught so that athletes can continue to either compete or find success in whatever they do next. Because our identity is so wrapped up in our performance, and that's
Mhm.
a shame, you know.
Yes, it is. And I know I've said before, I love the that sort of that thesis and the, I guess, the depth that you went with that, coming from both experience and bringing this academic side, but that stress that comes from it. How I know it's on Olympics, but how widespread do you think that is across all sports?
Oh, 100%. I had such a good friend recently tell me, I was talking to him about it, and he was working with athletic transition as well. And he said to me, he said, it's not just the Olympics. It's all athletes. I see it at the junior college level. I see it and the truth is, it was like, duh, like light bulb, right? Because my scope was so small. But
Yeah.
truthfully, you think about you're so regimented and there's so many hours of even just movement, right? And the positive neurotransmitters you get from movement, dopamine and endorphins and things like that. And then all of a sudden you stop and there's no titration down, and it's so not only so you stop completely with that, but then you also change your behavior doing other things. And it's like, well, if you're not exercising it from 100 to 0, of course you're going to experience depression. Like that's
Yeah,
just a given, right? And so it's nice to be aware of that and then figure out how do we fix that? How do we help those athletes transition to not experience that?
yes. What do we do?
Well, first off, education. I think
Yeah,
just some awareness and build a community of people. I really believe in the power of togetherness. And I think the more mentorship you have, if I had people ahead of me that said, watch out, let's figure this out together and move forward. And then encouraging best practices, like positive psychology is incredible and
yeah,
how far it's come in 20 years. And learning some of those things, I think, is incredible to just be able to thrive in the moments when acknowledge, like, yeah, I'm not okay. And how do I
mhm,
get help? How do I figure
yeah,
out what the next step is?
yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're so right. It's something, again, I think it's why I love your story so much, is it's something I truly believe in, and through conversations like this and other um, other activities that take place, you really start to see the help that athletes can have by being open, by hearing stories from people like yourself on, well, this is a thing that happens. This is how many of us feel. So it's okay to feel like that.
Right,
And
right,
then, as you say, that importance of learning, just having in the same way that we tend to learn about our bodies as athletes and think, okay, so if I move my arm this way, oh, maybe 5 centimeters to the left, what happens and what's that difference?
right.
Getting an understanding about our mental state and understanding those phases that we go through tends to be just as important, and getting access to that is really key.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm a total nerd for neuroscience and positive psychology. It's like the two. I just want to have a degree in both. And um, I feel like there's this idea of psychological strengths, right? And as athletes, we work so hard on our bodies. And sometimes I think the psychological side is lost. It's not worked on too. And it's a muscle, right? These are things that you can improve. Your well-being you can improve through best practices. And so having coordinating that I think is incredible. I'm reading this book right now called Flourish, and it's by Michael Seligman, the father of positive psychology, but they created this whole program through the military for trying to build resilience, psychological resilience, not just physical resilience. And it's fascinating, right? That they've brought this program to youth development as well, but I think it needs to also be brought to the athletic community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm curious. I want to touch on that book. Although I know I want to talk a bit about your book as well and your story. I'm interested, as you were coming through your sort of post-Olympic stress moment. What steps did you take to turn things around and get you, well, quite simply, back into the national finals? Just a few years later.
Yeah, I was really fortunate. I was, under contractual obligation to swim for Berkeley. I was under full ride going into my sophomore year of college, and I was their only breaststroker. And so my coach, Terry McKeever, told me, um, I went to her office, crying because I ended up with a back injury and the doctors were telling me I might not be able to walk if I continue swimming and I might not be able to have children. And I was just like, what? Like this isn't okay. And I went to her office crying, I don't want to swim anymore. I can't do this. I'm hurt. And she said to me, you can't quit until you're happy and healthy. And I said to her, I'm not going to want to quit when I'm happy and healthy. And she said, exactly. So every day you're going to show up, you're going to get in the water, even if it's for 5 minutes, and you get out, and then you'll just stand on the deck and you'll help. You'll be there, you'll be accountable to the team, and you'll be accountable to being an athlete in this group. And it saved me because I wasn't in school. We got a waiver as Olympic athletes in 2000 because the Olympics were in Sydney and it was all pushed back till September. So we were missing like the first 10 weeks of school. So we all got a waiver and I wasn't in school. So I wasn't training. I wasn't in school. I had absolutely no direction. I was so lost. Of course I was depressed.
Yeah.
And just her making me show up was a turning point because I didn't want to let the team down. I didn't want to let her down. I needed that accountability to just be present, be productive. And it took me a long time to get over the fear of competing because I had no idea how I was going to live up to what I had achieved.
Mm.
And it was scary. It was scary to step on the blocks. I remember feeling sick to my stomach getting up on the blocks again. Like I
Mhm.
don't think I can do it, which is so crazy. Like I had trained my whole life for it. Of course I could do it, but
Yeah.
that our brains are so strong in terms of our own belief system.
Yeah. So, what routine did you bring in place to help you to get over that?
I went to therapy. I did, talk therapy for a while, and it took me a while to find the right person, different sports psychologists that were helping. I also journaled, which I think helped a lot just to get my mind off of, like, get the things out that I was worried
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Um, and then ultimately, I just found joy being in the water because I,
Yeah.
I loved being in the water. That
Mhm.
didn't change.
Yeah.
And so figuring out how to play and be silly and have fun. And that helped me so much to just, okay, I can do this again, and I love to race. So as I started to race and just I had to, there was no choice.
Yes.
Each time I did, it got a little bit easier. And then I always have, I mean, athletes are superstitious. So I always have the same stretching routine,
Hmm.
different things to just help prepare. And I painted my nails. I put my suit on and danced in front of the mirror prior to the meet, all the little things to just make myself feel ready.
Yes. Yeah. Great. And I love that. It's great just to understand those bits, the routine, getting back into that rhythm, but also accepting talk therapy, accepting help, accepting the need to speak with someone. I think for many athletes who go through that, like you say, through the dip, through that depression, it's difficult to understand. Is that what others do? Or is it a sense of giving up by doing so? So the fact that you're, again, just comfortable just mentioning that, I think is going to help so many people listening, thinking, oh, well, that's okay. And it's okay to find the right person. It doesn't mean the
Yeah,
first person's the right one. And,
for sure.
again, one,
For
yeah,
sure. I also know
yeah,
that it helped me to educate myself, right? I think that idea of studying post-Olympic stress and trying to figure out the why
hmm,
helped me so much to just normalize it, right? And
yeah,
it wasn't normal. It didn't feel normal to me. It
mm,
wasn't normalized. But as soon as I started talking to other people, I went to camps 2 years later and I had these stories that sharing with me, like, oh, I'll tell you about it. And it was crazy the things that had happened to these people that just they didn't want to talk about. They didn't, and you didn't understand it unless you had been through it.
hmm,
But everyone, every athlete at some point is going to feel that. It's just a part of athletics.
yes, yeah. And so for you, we were talking about, you had two transitions, this first one, this realization and having to go through it, and thanks for sharing the journey to come out of that. And albeit, for or at least the trials weren't necessarily, didn't end how you wanted them to end, right? and you,
Yeah.
but I guess you were more prepared to deal with that, knowing yourself a lot more. So what came next for you?
I got married. I got married 6 weeks later, which was crazy. I was planning to go to the Olympics swim and then come back and get married. So I got married.
Yeah,
And then I started coaching. And I think that was kind of a nice transition to coach because I was
mhm,
still, I was still getting in the water. I was learning, using the skills that I had as a swimmer, um,
yeah,
to help others. And that was something I had enjoyed even while I was still swimming. Um, and I pursued work, but it took me, that was 2004, and it took me to 2008 to really retire. Like
right,
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to stop,
hmm,
even though financially I needed to be ready. I wasn't making enough money as a swimmer to just swim, but I think the realization that I was really done was in
hmm,
2008, and I had had enough time and distance between not making the team in 2004 to realize, like, no, I don't have anything else to prove.
yeah,
And it's hard. I'm sure you relate to this, but this idea of, I think when you achieve at the elite level, one of the components of that is never being satisfied.
hmm,
And you're always pushing and you're always trying to be better. And you don't ever pause and look back at how far you've come.
mm,
It's just this search, for to be the best. And for me, I couldn't acknowledge all of the things I had done. It was it was just focusing on the things that I had failed,
yeah,
and realistically, man, like I know I achieved a ton and I loved that about it, but it took me a long time. It took me probably 10 years after 2000 to realize like, yeah, you're good. You don't have to do anymore. You know?
And what do you think it is about that 10 years, that that realization? How did it come about? Is it someone beats you and again, and you think, oh, maybe I'm just not as good? Or is it something else that sort of clicks?
It's interesting. 2000, I'll share this story with you, but in 2000, at the Olympics in prelims, when I didn't swim as well as I wanted, I was so nervous. And I was watching the girl next to me in prelims swim. I was watching the whole race as I was swimming. I was just watching her. And when we dove in, she ended up a body length ahead of me off the dive. And at the time, my dives weren't great. So I thought, wow, like, how did that happen? And the whole time I was swimming, I just kept questioning, how is she so far ahead? And I was thinking about her, which of course, again, I didn't swim my race, right?
Mhm.
When I couldn't watch. I had video, like NBC records it, and then they give the athletes the recording, which is it's awesome. It's really sweet of them. At the time, it was on a VHS, dating myself, in the 1900s. No, it was 2000. I correct myself.
Yeah, it was the 2000s.
But,
In the 2000s, this century.
but my husband convinced me to watch the race in 2008. And he said, let's watch it. It was on video and he'd never seen it. Okay, fine, let's watch it. And so, fine, you know. And when I watched it, the underwater footage showed that she had taken like 3 dolphin kicks under the bubbles off the dive,
Mhm.
which at the time you couldn't take dolphin kicks in breaststroke. So she cheated.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
I felt this sense of validation, like 10 years later, 8 years later, like, oh, she cheated. That's why she was so and it didn't change history, of course. It didn't make my performance any better because it was still not great, but
Mm.
it gave me a little sense of like peace. Like, okay, I
Yeah.
wasn't that terrible.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah. That's it. That's
And
good.
people
So
people
you
cheat in
do
the
that.
Olympics. Like it
Yeah.
happens. What?
Yeah. Intentionally, unintentionally, but you push the boundaries, right? Because you want to win, and at times it's what you get away with. Within the regulations, usually, what can you
Yeah,
get away with?
unfortunately. Unfortunately it wasn't, but that's okay. I'm not bitter.
That's right. That's it. We're moving on. We're going to keep moving on. That's it. Yeah. So look, you say that decade, that time to you know move beyond being or defining yourself through that level of performance as an athlete. um, so what shifted? I describe career as this balance between paid employment, unpaid employment, or charitable work, the lifestyle, and that love of learning. So it's always this balance, it's always this shift that moves over time. So for you, as that athletic performance dropped away, what started to come up in its place?
I think just continuing the connection with people, that really it drove me in all of my choices. It's why I coach. It's why I teach. It's why I feel the obligation and desire to write a book, right? It's just this idea that I want to connect with people. I want to feel the
Mm.
power of togetherness and help people with my story and learn from others and their stories because everyone has a story, right? And
Yes.
it's so interesting to hear how far people have come and their struggles and their growth, and I'm fascinated with growth. I think that's why I just continue to learn. I'm like, I just give me more. I want to be better. And that never goes away. I think I'm the most competitive with myself because
Mm.
I want I want to be better. I read this quote. It's so good. It's from oh gosh, I'm going to kill it. It's from Flourish from the book, but Rhonda, she's a general. Rhonda Corman, I think is her name. I'll go back and correct myself later, but she
Yeah.
says the enemy of good is better. And I can't unhear it
Hmm.
because it's like, yeah, I don't want to be good. I want to be better.
Yes.
That never goes away.
No, no, it's right. It doesn't. Now, I am fascinated because you, your book, you've got this book that's out. It's about your stories, and we're on this show now because I love stories. I love your story, that story of change and transition athletically and into this life after that high performance sport. Tell me, who's the book for? What? and what is it about?
Yeah, I mean, the audience is very broad. There's no age range. Well, it is an adult book. There's definitely swear words in it. So please, children, don't read it. But I just have to preface that. But it's for the community. There's two target communities. One, athletes. I think the stories in there about athleticism and transition and what that looks like is going to be helpful for all athletes to read, whether they're swimmers or not, because I think it applies in a larger scope. The greater audience, I think, is the community that has experienced trauma and loss. Um, it's a book about healing. It's a book about healing through trauma and grief and how to thrive after such devastating things in your life. And everyone's experienced trauma, so the book is really for everyone over 18. And I'm excited to share that. I unfortunately lost my husband. He passed away in 2016. He had colon cancer stage 4, and he was diagnosed at 35. And for 2 years, he fought really hard to stay alive. And when he passed away, the grief that I experienced prior because of the cancer diagnosis, you really do grieve the minute they're diagnosed. You grieve for all the future memories that may not happen. Um, and then when he died, just that the challenge that I had to experience, not only for myself losing my partner, my best friend, but then also for my daughter, who was 5 at the time. And how do I parent her through that? And how do I survive to still be her mom? And it was really hard. It was really
Yeah,
hard. Um, and I was so lucky. I was so lucky that I just had angels that basically, I really believe through my faith, God sent me these people in my life that were angels that just guided me through that. And one of the things I did immediately was a program called Grief Share. And again, it was a program about educating yourself on grief, what grief was. It was normalizing it. It was connecting you with people. It was a support group. And I sat around this table with all these grannies that they all were in their, 60s, 70s, 80s, and they'd lost their partner of 30, 40, 50 years. And I was
yeah,
definitely the youngest by far, but sitting around the table and being able to cry about our loved one and connect and share stupid stories and make terrible, terrible, morbid jokes because that's what you do when you grieve. Um, it was a safe space,
yes,
and I cherish those connections. I cherish those stories. And my hope is that I can increase my positive impact internationally. I want everyone to read the book, and not for
yeah.
income. It's not for sales. It really is to bond and feel the sense of togetherness. We are one. We all experience the human condition of love and loss and what that looks like. And we do it at different times in our lives. But at some point, I think you need this book.
Mm. Ah, lovely, lovely. And I think you're right. We deal with grief throughout our life and the trauma. And whilst, it's certainly not on me to measure or put, different scales on that. But for you, and I think through your stories, we get to understand for you it was, be it athletic, but then of course also in life or that personal life, you feel that you've gone through that trauma and gone through that grief, and also continue to live, continue to thrive after that, the start of those grief moments as well. And
Yeah.
so through the book, as you read that, I know it talks about those different phases and those different periods of your life coming through it. When we think about where you are today, when grief, these moments of trauma, they certainly define us. How do you think those moments that you've gone through, how do they help you to thrive today?
You know, there's talk about post-traumatic growth, and there's research on it, and amazing scientists who have spent time, with data and collection and things. And this idea that we are stronger through the hard times, the adversity we experience makes us stronger. And um, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the loss, as ridiculous as that sounds.
I mean,
I had,
it
y-
does sound. It does sound ridiculous. It does sound silly to say I'm grateful for
Yeah,
the loss. But
I
tell
know. And
me,
I can't,
tell us why.
it's hard to put it into words, but I do feel like I felt like I had a hole in my heart,
Hmm.
when my husband passed.
Yeah.
And there's this idea now that the emptiness is space for growth.
Hmm.
The emptiness is space for expansion. And
Yeah.
so the fact that it's almost like it's open to channeling love more than
Hmm.
had I not lost. And I can't explain that feeling, but I just know that everywhere I go, I feel love and I give love. And it's authentic, it's genuine. And I love it. I mean, part of it is I'm bald. So people think I'm dying from cancer and they want to like give me sympathy, you know? And I just accept the love and give them a hug back because they want to connect, you know?
Hmm.
And um, at something that I value so much.
Yes. Yeah. You know that the strength that comes across to me here is in when you didn't make the Olympics, and the moment you touched the wall, you had your eyes closed, you went through that routine, you looked up, you saw you hadn't made it, you knew the result. That's a moment for many athletes that's a grief moment. That's a moment of, oh my gosh, I've not done this.
Yeah.
Your reaction coming out of the water there was recognizing those who are accountable to you or who you're accountable for, and so you held it together. You went over, and then you saw the young girls come in and asking for autographs. They still recognized you for who you were, and you were still a hero to them. But that behavior, it just takes me to what you've just described with, and you know, the process that you went through, the loss of your husband, and the way that you had a moment, but you recognized who you still needed to be there for, being your
Mm,
daughter, and for those around you, and still finding support. And I just think, whilst not trying to pull the magnitude of the feeling to the same extent, but what I recognize is the process and behaviors that you went through, that learning. For me, there's such a strong similarity that's there.
for sure.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
quite amazing.
100%. I love the connection. Thank you for that. I would never have seen it, so I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just I think it's great. So it's like it was there for you. It was always there. It was something that you had in you from a young age that you learned, and you've been able to adapt to that. Um, that's really powerful. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know,
Yeah.
I know I keep talking about it, but this idea of gratitude, right? And
Mm,
like gratitude is what makes you thrive.
yeah.
And there's best practices where you write 3 things a day that you're grateful for. And if you're watching this podcast, you need to do it. But 3 things are great that you're grateful for and why you're grateful
Yeah.
for it. And the more you do that, you create these deeper neural pathways in your brain. It becomes easier and easier. It's a skill, right? It's a muscle. It has to be practiced and consistently. And the more you do it, the more you feel like I'm going to get through it, whatever that is, that struggle. Like I'm going to get through it because I'm grateful that I'm breathing today, even though it's reflexive. I'm still breathing. The sun's
Mm,
still out. The birds are singing. wherever you are. Maybe not well, no, you're in Australia. It's got to be sunny there,
that's right. It is. It is sunny at the moment. It's a lovely day. So that's.
right?
But you were going to
Yeah,
say not in England. Like, no, not in England.
not in England. Yeah, I was going to say London. I'm like, you're not in England.
It is so true. And I'm curious then, that journaling, something that you did, you've done throughout a good chunk of your life. How helpful was that for you in starting to write the book, or at least coming up with the idea of writing a book?
Yeah, it was. I love writing. I think that was always something in me. And so journaling felt really natural to me. And I know not everyone loves writing. So the idea of journaling is kind of debilitating, I think, to some people. But
Mm,
again, I think it's a skill you can practice. And I think as I was going back to remember some of the stories, specifically of the Olympics, or making the team, the
mhm,
details of journaling helped me. I could go back and look at the journals and then include that in the book and have the details there and remember how I felt in that moment. Because as good as my memory is, I'm a mom. I feel like my child stole all my brain cells, and it's hard sometimes to remember. Um, but I do also feel like those moments of impact where your neurotransmitters are firing right? And when they're firing like that, it creates a memory that's so much deeper and stronger. And so sharing this book out and people are like, gosh, how do you remember? It's like, how do I forget? It's just
Mm.
in there. It's imprinted in me and I can't forget it. I feel it in my body. It's visceral. Um, I love music. I absolutely connect with music and I'll hear a song and I know it happens to everyone, but you hear a song and it takes you immediately back to that moment.
So true, so true. I was, for me personally, music. I was a DJ when I was younger, and living in France at the time. And when I play certain songs, it just takes me straight back into France and those memories. And it's wonderful, isn't it? The power of music. Yeah. And so look for you, today, when we think about what's next for you or where you're going, I just want to ask, for when you think about young athletes or athletes coming through, and you know obviously they're in their performance mode and this is it, this is the top that I'm going to be. What guidance would you give to help them transition better, or at least shift that balance from athlete towards a more, as you said at the start, being a good person, an all-rounded person?
Yeah, I think they need to connect with me. I think they need my help.
Done. That's it. They need to read your book and get in touch. How's that?
Read the book. No, I'm joking, kind of. No, I think it's really important to connect with the community for one. I think we've gotten really good at that through social media and just this idea of global community, right? The fact that you and I connected through one person and now we're speaking to each other on different continents is incredible, right? And I'm so grateful for that. So being leaning into those connections and being open to it, I think is really important to just get the help and mentorship you need, and then
Mm,
educating yourself and knowing you're normalizing these things, right? It's okay to feel the things you're feeling and give yourself grace for that and allow
yeah.
yourself the space to take the time that you need to transition, whatever that is, and I really believe I think a lot of transition work has to do with career. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I also know that there's this grind as an athlete. And you grind and you grind and you grind. And the harder you work, the more you're going to go. And when you go into work without debriefing and kind of learning learning that quality might be better than quantity, right? As we talked about earlier in swimming, you're not necessarily going to win at work by just working harder, right? You have
Mm,
to make connections with people. You have to navigate, you have to educate, you have to grow. And I think just putting your head down and grinding, a lot of times athletes and careers, whatever that is, just feel like very lost. Like they're not getting what they got out of athletics by working harder. They just become the workhorse. And so
yes.
I think it's important to recognize your strengths for one before you transition to career. Do the strength survey through positive psychology from UPenn. It's phenomenal. There's 24 strengths, and you figure out what is your strength, how can you
Mhm.
use that and leverage that to go into a field that you're going to find joy in, right? And I think
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate. I love my job. I love coaching. I love teaching, and I love connecting with people. I get the ability to speak to groups of people at conferences and motivate them and share my story and connect. And that I am so like I think I enjoy. I don't think I need the accolades of my swimming career because I feel like I have this connection with people now, and I'm pursuing something that is more impactful. It's not
Mm,
selfish. It's not for myself. It's for others. And I
mhm.
get something from it, of course, right? When you serve others, you're serving
Yes.
yourself. But
That's,
it feels so much bigger of a purpose than making an Olympic team.
yeah. Staciana, I want to say thank you so much for joining me on the show today. There are going to be people listening to this who are thinking, I want to know more. I want to follow. I want to buy a piece of you. Where can they find you? What's the best way to get in contact?
So website, bigwinenergy.org. That's my company, Big Win Energy, because we win together, not alone. And that's the best way. You can contact me that way. And then I have different Instagram handle I'll share out, I guess. I'm not sure how we would do that, but I'm happy to share the Instagram handle. It's just at Staciana W. Yeah, and please connect with me. I would absolutely love it. Read my book, share, get on the website. And there's more goodness to come. This is just the beginning.
Just the beginning. It absolutely is. Look, we'll put all that information in the show notes. So, Staciana, thanks again for joining me on the show. Absolutely loved your story and this conversation.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate your time and everything that you do.